Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. This is not the video I had scheduled for today, but sometimes awesome people do awesome things, and I end up throwing the schedule out the window to make space to talk about it. Today, the awesome person is viewer Vincent O'Neill, and the awesome thing is he sent me a copy of the Rogue Heir of Elethorn, the most recent character pack for Hasbro's new edition of HeroQuest. As I mentioned in a previous video, I had been having real trouble getting this expansion. I ordered it from two different companies, both of which claimed to have stock. They did not. But Vincent O'Neill has proven himself to be an excellent human being. He has generously donated a copy of the Rogue Heir to the channel, wanting nothing in return except for a quick shout out for his favourite haunt, Northern Card Gaming, which is apparently Northern Ireland's fastest growing hobby store. I'll put a link to their Facebook page in the video description below for anybody in the region who might like to check them out. First of all, I just want to mention how this expansion is presented. Hasbro, or I guess I should be more specific here and say Avalon Hill, have really pulled out all the stops to make this feel like a premium product. It actually feels like a collector's piece, and I think that's a great move, because purely on a retail price basis, these character expansions don't stand up well when compared to other HeroQuest expansions. In the UK, these packs are priced at £16.99, and for that you are getting 2 miniatures and a handful of cards. Compare that to £25 for Keller's Keep and Return of the Witchlord, or £38 for the Frozen Horror, and it's clear there is a dramatic difference in value. Now admittedly, it's not really a fair comparison. Smaller expansions are always less competitively priced than larger expansions for numerous reasons, but nevertheless, the higher price tag is easier to swallow when it feels like you are purchasing something a bit special. So you can see we have a small box with the HeroQuest Hero Collection branding on one side and a card wraparound with the Rogue Heir sigil, and then on the reverse a brief description of the hero and a list of contents, 2 finely detailed miniatures, 12 game cards and a story card. To get into the box you pop this tab out on the side and then remove the card wrapper like so. Then we just take off the lid. You are immediately presented with the story card, which looks like a letter sealed with the Rogue Heir's emblem. Beneath that, we have 2 wrapped sets of cards. There are 6 cards in each set, 2 items, 3 skills and a character card. The only difference is that one set of cards depicts the male version of the Rogue Heir, while the other set depicts the female version, which is a really nice touch. Beneath those cards we have 2 little compartments, each containing 1 miniature, 1 male hero, 1 female hero. They are both lovingly wrapped in tissue and sealed with a sticker. We'll look at those in a moment. First, let's go back to that story card. When you open this, there is an official communique. I will read it in my most dramatic voice. Your Royal Highness, as the bravest of warriors and the heir to the Kingdom of Elethorn, it is critical that you are made aware of a serious threat to the realm and to your family. We know that you have sought independence from your mother, Queen Terelia, as you travelled the world this past 12 months, far from your life of wealth and privilege. Now the Queen, our beloved monarch, has requested that you return from your journey forthwith. The seer of the court has used psychic powers and celestial reckoning to locate you. Our fleetest windcutter is standing by to transport you to the palace without delay. Both our kingdom and your family are in grave peril. The Queen's decision to honour our defence treaty with the King of the Realm by sending our most courageous heroes to his aid has riven a deep chasm in our populace. The council has broken down into opposing factions, and there are reports of deadly skirmishes breaking out in the capital streets. Furthermore, it is with great sadness that we inform you that your aunt, the Archmage Sinestra, has taken your young sister Melendriel hostage in her stronghold in the marshes of Glynis Fen. While her motive is unknown at this time, we suspect that she will demand the Queen's abdication. Sinestra is likely influenced by powerful but still unidentified evil forces that must be crushed before their poisonous tentacles take hold. You may be of assistance to those heroes who step forward to lead a counterattack. Your kind regard in treating this matter with extreme secrecy and discretion is appreciated. May the strength and long life of the mighty oak be bestowed upon you. Well, that's nice, and it all ties in with the storyline of the Mage of the Mirror expansion. Additionally, on the reverse of the card we have the new rules. It tells you how you can select the Rogue Heir to replace any other hero in the party, more on that in a moment, and it also includes the rules for multiple attacks, which again I will discuss in a moment. Before we dive deeper into the rules and abilities for this character, let's take a quick look at the plastic. Here is the male rogue, and it's pretty good. There are some nice details, the coat is really good, and there's no excessive flash or mould lines. I would say it's better than the miniatures from the core game. I know Avalon Hill said they have changed their production methods for the miniatures since they printed the core set, and it looks like those changes were in effect for when they made this. I'm not keen on the reverse grip for the short sword, and the throwing dagger is way too big, but it's okay. It captures the essence of the character. And here is the female rogue. Pretty much the same stance, just slightly less dynamic. And really, apart from the ponytail, I think you would be hard pressed to tell these apart at a distance, or to know which one was the male and which was the female. Again, the detail and moulding are good, but she has that same reverse grip on her short sword. At least her dagger seems more in proportion. Overall, I think these are decent miniatures, and it does feel like a marked improvement in quality over the core set miniatures, with less flex in the plastic and much crisper detailing. But I really wish they had made the two sculpts more distinct. I really like how the female barbarian in the Frozen Horror looks completely different to her male counterpart from the core game. But as you're never allowed to have two of the same hero in your party, it's not a major issue. Here are the character cards. As I already mentioned, you get two sets of cards that are functionally the same, but the art is different to depict the male and female versions of the hero. Our rogue gets 1 attack dice, 2 defend dice, has 5 body and 4 mind. Their starting weapon is a dagger, and on the reverse of the card it states that the rogue cannot use metal armour or shields. These stats situate our rogue somewhere between the wizard and elf from the core set. Attack and defense are the same as the wizard, and the severe limitations on armour also mean that, like the wizard, the rogue will find it difficult to significantly boost their defense value. However, in terms of body and mind, the rogue is closer to the elf, which I guess isn't surprising. They have the same mind value, but the rogue has just 1 body point less. Being almost as squishy as the wizard without having any tasty magic to offset that disadvantage might be a little concerning, but our rogue does get a set of 3 very good skills, and unlike the wizard's spells, the rogue's skills aren't limited to a single use per dungeon. The first skill is combat mobility, which allows them to move through spaces occupied by monsters. This is a godsend ability, as it prevents bottlenecking in doorways and tight corridors. The rogue can bound through obstructing adversaries, allowing for pincer attacks or simply gaining access to harder to reach areas. Combat mobility works very well in conjunction with their second skill, Opportunistic Striker. Once per turn, the rogue may throw 1 extra combat dice when attacking a monster next to another hero. That's really going to help offset that starting attack of just 1 dice, but it will require good coordination with the rest of the team to get the full effect each turn. Finally, we have what is probably the rogue's best ability, Ambidextrous. Once per turn, when they attack with a short sword or dagger, they may make 1 additional attack with a dagger. Multiple attacks in HeroQuest are stupidly good. They first appeared in the Frozen Horror because the Polar Warbears have the ability to whomp you twice per turn. The rule is, if an attacker hits the same target with multiple attacks, the defender is only allowed to defend against 1 of those attacks. That means you can use both of the rogue's attacks against the same target, and one of those attacks will instantly bypass even the toughest armour, or you can use them against different targets to thin out hordes of minor enemies such as goblins. The limitation of only being able to use the skill with short swords and daggers keeps your killing frenzy in check, but as you can use this skill in conjunction with Opportunistic Striker, that still means you can throw out a couple of 2 dice attacks, or even a 3 dice attack with a short sword followed by a 1 dice dagger strike. But it gets better, because Ambidextrous can be used when you are throwing your daggers, and throwing daggers is something you are going to be able to do a lot, because the rogue starts with a dagger and the awesome bandolier. And I do think it's worth pointing out, Avalon Hill went the extra mile here and commissioned new artwork for the dagger card. The bandolier item is only usable by the rogue, and while they have it, they are always considered to be armed with a dagger. The reason that's so good is because normally, if you choose to throw a dagger, you lose it, but thanks to the bandolier, you can chuck as many daggers as you want and you will never run out. In other words, your rogue can skip around the board without any concern for the placement of monsters, throwing multiple daggers per turn. The damage output is never going to be excessive, but a consistent stream of ranged attacks is really going to put Zargon's forces under pressure. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, the bandolier also acts as a toolkit, so you have a character with a 50% chance of dealing with traps in the absence of a dwarf. Speaking of the dwarf being absent, that brings us to the first of 3 questions. If you decide to take the rogue heir on your adventures, which hero should you leave behind? This is quite a difficult question. especially for me as I can't be bothered to crunch any numbers, and it depends largely on if you were one of the people who was lucky enough to get the Guardian Knight expansion, or if you have the bonus characters that were available during the original crowdfunding campaign. So I'm going to consider the question from the perspective of someone who only has the 4 core heroes. Even then, it's not an easy choice, and it will probably end up coming down to personal preference more than anything else. The rogue lacks the potential damage output and resilience of the barbarian or dwarf, but also lacks the magical capabilities of the wizard and elf, so where do they fit? The barbarian is a no-brainer, never leave home without one, and I really think the wizard is a must, due to the range of spells they have, including repeated, consistent access to healing spells, so you aren't always relying on potions. The rogue could step in for the dwarf. They have a toolkit, which is a decent substitute for a trained dwarfish mind when it comes to traps, but the dwarf will power up to become an awesome tank. Remove them from the team and you are left with a barbarian and 3 rather squishy friends. For that reason, I think the rogue heir is probably going to be most useful stepping into the shoes of your original elf. You are losing access to 3 spells, but they are one-use items, while the rogue gets 3 skills that are powerful and repeatable. Personally, I would drop the fire spells, which were really good in the original UK version of HeroQuest, but aren't much cop here. The second question is regarding turn order. When should your rogue activate? Bearing in mind they are able to skip through opponents, gain a benefit when attacking monsters that are already engaged with other heroes, and can disarm traps, I think it makes sense for the rogue to activate last. The last question is the rogue too powerful, and are there any weaknesses to be aware of? I personally think they seem very powerful. An unlimited supply of throwing daggers, unlimited freedom of movement, and the ability to boost damage output under the right circumstances is a very solid set of skills. But at first blush at least, this seems to have been well balanced with some disadvantages. Limiting armor makes sense for a rogue, but they do still have some options. I particularly like that ambidextrous is limited to use with lighter weapons, swords and daggers, but that doesn't mean the rogue can't make use of heavier weapons if they want to. I would say the biggest risk with the rogue is getting a bit too keen and moving too far out of position. For example, there is a very real risk of skipping through an opponent who is blocking a doorway, failing to kill that opponent, and then having to face multiple attacks from enemies while your friends look on helplessly from the room next door. Ultimately, this looks to be a character that will benefit from careful, considered play, always with one eye on making sure there is a dwarf, barbarian or knight nearby to soak up the bigger hits. But I think that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Thank you once again to Vincent for his incredible generosity and for making this video possible. Thank you to all of you who have already chosen to join the new Always Bored Never Boring Members Club. And thank you everybody for taking up some of your valuable time listening to me. If you liked the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.